We're shooting down your questions one by one here at the 2025 SHOT Show. My name is Mike Boone, legal instructor for Blue to Gold Law Enforcement Training, bringing you a roadside chat from the Huey. All right. So our question comes from an officer in, let's see where we at here, Iowa. All right. The question says, I have watched lots of your videos on YouTube, and I appreciate you putting those out as they are super helpful. Well, first of all, thank you for that, and we appreciate all of you for continuing to watch our videos. This one's pretty fun. I'm sitting in a helicopter. All right. So here's our question. I've only been in law enforcement for about 2 years, and recently I switched from the local police department to the sheriff's office. All right. I was on patrol one day, and the city officer that was on duty had a short chase that ended in an arrest. Gotta love a good pursuit, right? When I arrived, the city officer had the suspect handcuffed, had put him in the back of her patrol vehicle. The vehicle was in the roadway and needed to be towed, but prior to towing, I asked the officer if she wants to do a quick inventory of the vehicle. Another officer that was there said that case law has made it so we're not able to do inventory anymore, and the city officer was concerned about finding other illegal items such as narcotics that she would need a search warrant to do an inventory, as it seemed to be more of a search than an inventory to her. I did advise her if she finds narcotics, she could stop her inventory and get a search warrant. Is there case law in the state of Iowa that has restricted law enforcement from doing inventory anymore? Or can you provide case law that confirms or declines this? Great question. Let's just start off with the foundation for inventories right off the bat. Inventories are something that are being highly scrutinized these days by courts all over the place, in addition to Iowa. And the case we'll talk about here in a second was because there were some things going on in Iowa and many other jurisdictions where officers were using the inventory exception to the warrant rule to gather evidence. You know, they're trying to work around the Fourth Amendment in order to get inside these cars using the inventory. And, you know, this case originates from a case called South Dakota versus Opperman, where the guy's car was being towed because of parking violations. And the officer saw a watch inside there. They were concerned about protecting the owner's property, any liability against the agency themselves or the tow company. Is kind of where this thing started. And, you know, that's why we inventory vehicles, to protect the owner's property, to protect against claims against an agency. And if there's any secure any dangerous items in that vehicle that we wouldn't want getting into the wrong hands. So that's kind of your baseline of why we get to do inventories of vehicles. But really, you've got to follow your policy. Right? Your policy is going to give you guidance as far as the direction. The Supreme Court kind of gave that back to the agencies, like follow your policy as far as direction to do so. So that's part one, follow your policy. Part two is it's not a subterfuge or not a workaround to gather evidence inside of a car. In doing so, we've got to abide by the rules that are set forth. Automobile exception, consent. You know, our acronym CREW here at Blue to Gold. You get consent from a person with authority, fantastic, search the car. Is there, you know, recognized exception based on the Carroll Doctrine? Search the car then. But don't work around in these inventories. You say to yourself, what's the worst that could happen? Well, here's what happened up in North Dakota, a case called Nurseberg versus Crawl. And in this, the officers had a hunch that Crawl was involved in narcotic sales, but they couldn't get consent. They didn't have any kind of recognized exceptions to get in the car. So they said, you know what, we'll just inventory the vehicle. We'll tow it and we'll inventory it, see what we get. All right, so that's what they decided to do. What's the worst could happen? They open up that trunk, and inside is a dead female. A female that Crawl had raped and killed. Well, we all know the power of the Fourth Amendment. That was determined to be a violation of Crawl's Fourth Amendment. They excluded her body from evidence. That's the worst that could happen, at least the worst that I've seen so far. So that's kind of a general, when we talk about inventories, why we do them, and kind of the context behind it. Now let's go to Iowa. All right, Iowa has become more restrictive on their ability to do inventories out there. And what took place in this is cops were doing that. They were working around it here. And in a case called State versus Ingram, and this is from 2018, Essentially, they stopped a car for traffic violations. The plates didn't match the vehicle, and the officers were going to inventory the vehicle. Well, they end up inventorying it. Ingram said, hey, there's nothing of value inside that car. Nothing need to worry about it. Officers are fine. And they end up searching there's a black cloth bag inside, kind of, I think, on the driver's floorboard. And they find narcotics inside there, end up charging Ingram for that. So that's kind of the parameters of this case. And essentially what Iowa said in this is, in order for us to do this inventory in the state of Iowa, there's a few things. And a quote from that case says, officers must provide alternate options, including park and lock options on nearby streets or parking lots, or calling a friend or third party to drive the vehicle away. So what they're looking for in Iowa is there another way? Is there another way to take the burden off of this inventory, take the burden away from this person's vehicle being towed? That's reasonable. Is there somebody else there? Then it's reasonable that they take the car and the police don't inventory. Can we park it a few feet away? So again, if they're looking for an alternative, and again, that's State versus Ingram. The courts also addressed there's going to be a necessity at times. So there's going to be times where we're going to have to tow this vehicle. Like it's in the scenario, the officer said, well, we have to tow it. It's blocking the roadway. Someone can't respond in a timely amount of time here. And in doing so, what the court is looking for is consent from the person that owns that vehicle to search any closed containers inside that vehicle. And so the training point that came from this is, in impounding a vehicle following a traffic stop, again, if there's no other alternative in there, if there's, we can't do something else, we ultimately have to. Any opening of containers within the vehicle by police during an inventory search must be done with consent that is knowing and voluntary. You got to let them know, hey, I want to open up the bags inside there. I want to, if there's some luggage in there, I want to see what's inside there. And under the state constitutional provision prohibiting unreasonable searches and seizures. So we've got to ask. We've got to ask. And if we don't get that consent from them, essentially the liability is now on the owner of that vehicle. They're saying, hey, there's nothing of evidentiary, or not evidentiary, value inside my vehicle. I'm willing to take that risk. I basically want my car just to be a container, and I don't want you all looking in that. And that's really the provisions that came out of this here. There's find another alternative if you can to towing an inventory. And if there's nothing else we can do, you got to get consent for any containers inside that vehicle in Iowa. So Iowa's one of the states. There's a few other states out there that also have some little more restrictions on inventory. Just be familiar with it. So as the officer asked here, what's the case we're looking for? State versus Ingram, 2018. All right, well, it looks like we're getting ready to land. Hope this helps. If you guys have anything else for us here at Blue to Gold, always reach out to us at bluetogold.com. Like, subscribe to the channel, and for now, guys, take care.